With the election near, everyone in the U.S. is holding their breath, fearing their impending doom. Despite our country spiraling downwards into its ultimate demise, you have no need to fear, for us at the Pitt Maverick are here to help save the day. We hope. We seriously hope we can be here to save the day. My name is Sam Blafer, and welcome to the first episode of the Mavericast. Hello and welcome to the Mavericast. My name is Sam, introducing Pizza Party Andy Zengraf.
How's it going?
Michael Yorgi. And Arno.
Hi.
Okay, so first topic before we even get into the news, because it has been quite the week. It is November 1st that we are recording this. We're going to first talk about the purpose of this podcast and why are we doing a political show in this medium, in audio, with a bunch of college students who have papers to write. So, the first thing I think that we should talk about is truth and how I think that this election cycle truth has kind of gone away, and I think that we should focus on telling the truth on both sides of the aisle, even though we are all conservatives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we hope to accomplish here is to provide a differing perspective than what most college students would like to hear. Mm-hmm. And podcasts is, of course, a great medium to do that because, I don't know about you guys, I like to have podcasts on, working on a paper, playing Madden especially, yeah.
I think audio is so prolific, especially among our generation. Everyone's always plugged in. And so this is the easiest and sometimes the most effective way for a lot of people to absorb their information.
And I think as people in college, I think that we're on the front lines of politics a lot. I mean, politicians are always targeting the youth to kind of like, hey, like, look at this democratic socialism. It's really great. And then we're going to kind of be the people that are like, no, it is not. So I think being young conservatives, having a podcast, trying to talk about truth, and also being honest about our opinions, I think is very important in politics today. And also, just to note, we will be talking about national and local news since we are in Pittsburgh. Obviously, and in America, right? I think it's important that we do obviously cover the election, which is so sadly ending in a week. It's been a really fun ride. I know, it's been awesome. And but also local news, and we will get to that later with an article that we've put up on the Maverick, or two articles that we put on the Maverick. But right now I think it's important to kind of talk about ourselves, introduce ourselves, and talk about our own political alignments. So if you want to start, Arno.
Oh, good, I get to start. Okay, so my name's Arno Armstrong. I'm a junior at Pitt, study political science. My own political alignments, let's see. I supported Cruz in the primary, so I'm pretty conservative.
Some would say.
Yeah. My main focus is on poverty, education, especially fiscal issues, though I do consider myself to be a cultural conservative as well. Not much else to add, really. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'll go now. My name is Sam Blafer. I'm a sophomore at the University of Pittsburgh. I am a political science and history major. In terms of my own political alignment, I listen to a lot of Ben Shapiro and Andrew Klavan, if that's a hint about what I think about politics. I would say that I'm pretty libertarian on a lot of issues. I'm pretty, I guess, classic Reagan Republican on foreign policy. And I do think the issues that I think I'm most strong on, or that I focus the most on, are poverty and abortion and race issues in the country. Andrew?
So I'm Andrew Zengraf, a.k.a. Pizza Party Andy, as I think I'll be called a lot on here. But if I had to classify myself, I would say I'm certainly a Reagan conservative with libertarian leanings on certain issues. In the primaries, I voted for John Kasich because I believed he was the best candidate who could win the general election.
His face went through the dryer.
But aside from that, I think the biggest issues to me are national security, fiscal responsibility, and just like Arno and Sam said, urban poverty and poverty across the nation is a very important issue to me as well.
I thought I was special.
No, you're not.
My name's Mike. My political beliefs are between conservative and libertarian, I guess. Like, poverty's an issue, but
We're
I guess
talking
I'm-
too much about poverty.
I guess that's like I'm more center right on that, but like I don't know. I just get about like people. Oh damn! I swore God.
I'll cut it.
I just care more about being taxed for stuff that we shouldn't be taxed about, or raising taxes.
Do you want to build a wall?
Oh yeah, I'm all for it. But Mexico's gonna pay for it, so taxes are irrelevant.
Okay, so I think another point to talk about here is Trump. Are we all registered Republicans, or do we all vote Republican?
Oh, yeah.
At the very
Yes.
least.
Yes.
Most
Okay.
of the time.
So, this has been an interesting election to say the least. I think that Donald Trump has had a massive impact on the Republican Party and the country as a whole. So to start, I just think also, which will kind of show our political leanings, would you classify yourself as, I love Donald Trump, he's perfect, I'm voting for Donald Trump because he's not Hillary Clinton, or please God, can you end life right now, send us a meteor?
Definitely the latter for me. I have been never Trump since the spring. I've just been so disgusted by him. Though, frankly, seeing the way a lot of Pitt students are responding to our Trump supporters is so frustrating that it does force me to reconsider. So I mean, we'll see what happens on election day.
I would say he's not perfect, but I would say for what he has done so far, I think he has actually helped the Republican Party in ways that I don't think any candidate would have done.
I kind of sort of thread the needle for a lot of conservatives. I mean, obviously, I didn't support him in the primary. I would have liked our nominee to be preferably almost anybody else. But it came down to it, and I think it was one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make. But at the end of the day, he's willing to go out there, fly our flag, and fight our battles, and I'm willing to support him against Secretary Clinton.
I am personally, I had a tough primary season last year. I went from Rand to Jeb to Rand to Jeb, Jeb to Marco,
Oh, wow.
little Marco, thirsty, to Cruz, and
There we go.
then Trump. So I think Donald Trump has had an interesting impact on the Republican Party. I will say that I think he's had some of the best moments a Republican has had recently.
And some of the worst.
And some of the worst. I think all of the worst. I think that we can get to that later. But, Arno, you mentioned the hate towards conservatives and Trump supporters, specifically on the campus. And I think it's important to talk about the Pitt Mavericks' definitely most popular articles regarding violence against Trump supporters on the campus. So, first thing I want to note is that we won't be talking about the events themselves necessarily, because you can check out our articles. I'll put it in the link dump. Please watch them and watch the videos. I did a great cut of the video in the second article, so I'm super talented.
Amazing.
Really just the best. So do you guys think that this is indicative of larger hate towards conservatives on the campus?
Absolutely. I think one of the most disturbing parts of this whole ordeal has been not just the incidents themselves, but the broader response to it from the students. We keep hearing over and over again from people that while they wouldn't have done this themselves, they understand why it was done. And that's just such an inappropriate reaction on just a whole host of levels. That's not the way free speech works. Yes, you can understand why, and we can understand why you might not agree with a Trump supporter. Sure. But that by no means should ever excuse the actions that were taken. And I think that the sort of almost excuse making or empathizing with the people who did this is, I think, the most distressing part of all of this.
And I think that just this intolerance of just other views. I mean, I'm sure if we were out there with someone who's like Ted Cruz, I mean, a guy who's probably one of the most honest people, I think, in politics today.
Absolutely.
And just seems like a nice, genuine, principled guy, I'm sure that they would do that to us too. And I think, I mean, there are people coming up. There's a guy on my Facebook. I shared the link to the Pitt Maverick article. And there was a guy on my friends list who commented, intolerance of intolerance does not equal intolerance. Yes, it is intolerance. Just like how there is not, if you are racist towards someone and you're And it is not reverse racism. It is just racism. It is intolerance all the way through. And you can't just say, well, because Trump's a big old meanie and he says a lot of mean things, it's justified. I don't think violence is ever justified. And I would call out a Trump supporter who's violent, and I would call out a Hillary supporter or whoever is violent. And I think it's completely terrible. I'm really happy that our school has taken a stand against this violence. And
to kind of branch off of that a little bit, I think I've actually been a little overwhelmed by the positive response that we've received from so many people. I can't even tell you the number of people who've come up to me while I'm tabling for Trump and have said, I'm not voting for Trump. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a Republican, but I respect you guys for being out here.
A lot of them have been Bernie supporters.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have said, I supported Bernie in the primary. I'm really mad at the Democratic Party. I'm not going to vote for Trump, but it was completely inappropriate what happened to you guys. And there were multiple people who came up to us and said that. Mm-hmm. And to another point, we aren't even like going out, handing things out. We are literally standing there talking to each other. There's like 7 people around the stand just chilling out, and then people come up and start yelling at us.
And I think that it can sort of get lost in the undertow that we've had so many, I think, meaningful conversations with so many people when you have a handful of instances when it gets out of control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You want to mention anything at all, or?
Not really. I mean, you guys just kind of like summed it up. It just like, I don't know, it just really sucks, and just how it seems to be increasing as the election kind of comes closer and closer.
I think, though, I know that in election years, everybody gets super heated about politics. I mean, I remember in middle school when Obama was first running against McCain, and I live in a very Republican area in New Jersey, and people are saying a bunch of bad things about Obama, and I grew up in a household with 2 Democrats as parents, so I was like, oh no, Obama, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that now, but, I think kids of all ages do get really riled up over politics, and I think especially in college now when people are super passionate about it. But I think that this is even more than just an election year. I think that this is all the time. I mean, I know last year, I wasn't a member of Pitt College Republicans last year, but I didn't even go to the event, but the controversy surrounding Milo coming, I know, was really big. And I watched the video online. He was just standing up there talking. He didn't do anything I thought that was too inflammatory. I think he just expressed his opinions, and if you have an opposing opinion, people will just get mad.
But building off of what you were saying, Sam, a little earlier, is, and I think that's really disturbing, is just the level of indoctrination we see among these protesters who are responsible for these incidents. They're throwing out accusations of racism, of homophobia, of every kind of bigotry. But even myself as someone who can't stand Trump, I have many reasons for it, but bigotry isn't one of them. I would like to know what is the evidence of Trump's racism, of his homophobia.
And to that point, Trump was criticized in the primaries for not being strong enough on religious liberty. Yeah. So, one of my friends on Facebook today wrote that Trump was transphobic. And this is the guy who said anybody can use any bathroom in his buildings. So, and then Caitlyn Jenner goes to Trump Tower and uses the women's restroom. So these accusations, it is just the left getting scared. I don't even know that necessarily that he's going to win, but I think it's the left just in defense mode because he, I think, again, has had some actual good attacks on them, on poverty, on racial issues. I think that he's actually had some solid points about that this election season.
Yeah, the one charge, phobic-ist charge that really gets to me is the homophobic charge, because they really don't have any evidence or quotes supporting that. I think it was a really great gesture to invite Peter Thiel to speak at the Republican convention. And particularly, he was invited by GoProud to speak at CPAC a few years back. So I think it's also, I had a conversation about this today, to where it's very dangerous to toss out these terms, especially when they don't apply, because it's the boy who cried wolf problem.
Right. And I remember Andrew Breitbart in his book Righteous Indignation talks about how calling someone a racist is the worst thing you can be called in this country, because we have such a bad history with it. And to just start throwing out this word, it is going to be a boy who cried wolf. Because when there actually is a racist thing going on, which I think there are, and I think it's on the left.
Certainly.
I think that we're just going to ignore it, and we're just going to be so used to racism, so used to people saying you're an anti-Semite or something like that, all these terrible things, that if you just start flinging this around, then it's not really going to have an effect. I know that there was a Podesta email that came out today, I saw it on Twitter, that said if you want to have an effective attack, compare your opponent to Hitler. It's like real original, first of all, and second of all, that is not a light accusation. I think that we think of Hitler very casually now because it's been nearly 100 years, but that's not a light attack. And I think people using these terms, using these comparisons to these actual horrific things that we have seen, these terrible things, like it's really just gonna hurt people when it actually happens.
And these attacks are so generic.
Right.
Of all the things you could attack Trump for, they're just using this classic leftist playbook. They're accusing Trump of the same things they would and have accused Romney, McCain, Bush, and every other Republican of being. And that's, I think, what's so frustrating is it just doesn't stop. It doesn't matter what the candidate is. It's this sort of radical indoctrination into believing that it's the policies of the Republican Party that are all of these horrible things. And it's just such nonsense.
And you know, the thing is, like, these are the people who are going out calling all white people racist. I mean, isn't that racist in itself? And I want to bring this back to the Trump table, where you are calling people representing a candidate. Just tabling, sitting there. We all go to the same school, and there was someone, I know you were there, Andrew, that said, "Get off of my campus."
Yeah, that sort of entitlement is indicative, I think, of many college students today, to have that source of entitlement over that it's your campus. Like, I know,
talk about privilege, right?
Yeah, that is one of the most privileged statements. During Milo last year, one of the biggest complaints we had was that my tuition dollars were going towards funding Milo, which first off wasn't true.
And I mean, talking about funding, our tuition dollars go, if that even was true, that would mean that our tuition dollars went towards bringing Michael Brown's father here.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
You think we're happy about that? Like, absolutely not. We're not happy about that.
But, you know, we don't think about that.
Right.
You know, because we understand, number one, it's a public university.
Right.
So a good portion of the financing is coming directly from the taxpayers. You know, everyone has a right to complain, but we just don't, because we don't. We like you said, Andrew, we lack that sense of entitlement. We understand it's a university, that you need to have this free exchange of ideas, and that especially because it's a public university, you need to have this equal representation.
Like, one of the points I always hit home is that we're not here to be insulated. We're not here to be protected from ideas that we don't like. We need to be at a university, such an esteemed university like this, to be exposed to new ideas, to be challenged in our own beliefs.
And it's not even just getting into debates randomly. It's not even that we're going to go on the street, pick out someone, push them into a wall, and be like, are we going to build the wall, or do you not like it? No, it's going to be something as simple as sitting there with a Trump sign on a table with some literature about Trump that is not even inflammatory stuff. I mean, what do we have on there? The NRA stuff and the pledge your vote and and buttons and stickers. Like, if that upsets you, I'm sorry. I wish that was the most important thing in my life.
And I keep a Reagan Bush sticker and a Trump sticker on my laptop, and I can't tell you the number.
And a Rand sticker.
And a Rand sticker, that's correct. I can't even tell you the number of looks that I've gotten, the number of comments that I've gotten over it.
And people are calling us fascists. They will go fascists when
Yes,
they're walking
that's the
by.
new thing.
Yeah.
And yesterday they called us fascists. I'm wearing a Rand Paul shirt. If Rand Paul is a fascist, I don't know if Hitler's a fascist then.
I want to have a conversation with these people about what exactly is a fascist to them.
Right.
How can they define it? Because as poli-sci students, many of us, one of the first things we learn how to do is how to conceptualize a concept. And they don't have that conceptualization for the term. It's lost its meaning.
Oh, absolutely.
Who here has read Jonah Goldberg's Liberal Fascism?
I have not.
I've read parts of it.
I've listened to the whole thing because I'm too lazy to read.
Yeah.
Has anybody here read or listened to or seen the movie for Dinesh D'Souza's new?
Oh, no, I haven't yet.
No?
No.
We should all watch that. I have seen it. They both get to the same point, which is, both things go through the history of fascism, just leftist thought. But the most important thing is that they go through the concepts of fascism, especially, Jonah Goldberg's book is all about it. And it goes through the history of of the fascist thinkers. Hitler and Mussolini. It even goes through. It goes through FDR actually, and
Yeah, that makes sense.
it goes through the progressive era and all of he calls it the fascist periods in American history, where all of these big strongmen are taking hold of our country, and I think we think positively about a lot of them, but you have to look back and be critical instead of just celebrating these people. And I think part of that, the indoctrination that you spoke about, Arno, the indoctrination of saying FDR was the most amazing president ever, he was perfect, he saved our country, even though the New Deal didn't work until the war started.
It was an abject failure.
Which, many of us, anybody who's taken either an American history course in high school or university knows that this is the story that we're told. That's the viewpoint that we're presented with. Almost any textbook, any professor, any AP teacher in high school will tell you exactly that.
And again, it all goes back to the narrative. And I think, and I remember in high school, I was taking a European history class, and it was IB Euro, and my teacher was going over the idea of National Socialist German Workers' Party, and he goes over so he says it's a right-wing movement, and he says, so national, right-wing, socialist, left-wing, German, right-wing, workers, left-wing, party. It's confusing because there's elements of left and right, but it is a right-wing party.
How the hell does German and right make any sense?
and when people talk about nationalism, I know it's been a really big issue in this election. If you guys want to talk about that too, and also relate that back to the treatment on the campus, calling us all alt-righters, which I know I'm definitely not. Nationalism is, I don't know if it's necessarily a left-wing or a right-wing thing, which is why I'm kind of opposed to just the left-right. I think there's more than just a left and right on the scale. I think that there's an up and down. I don't know if, I know
certainly. I think in a European context, nationalism is traditionally right-wing.
Mm-hmm.
In an American context, I don't think that applies at all. We know that the right and left spectrum in Europe is, or at least has been traditionally, far different than it has been in the past.
And I think part of it is that when you speak about conservative and liberal, these are relative terms, and they're relative to something. You are conservative to something. I mean, you could say Bernie Sanders is conservative to Marxism or democratic socialism. So when we talk about these terms, you have to relate it back to what are they conservating? What does conservative mean? And I think that's also been a big part on the Republican side of the aisle. What is Trump conservative? What is conservatism? And I think that, and I mean, definitely American conservative is conservative to the Bill of Rights, conservative to the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and our founding documents and what our founders have said and written. And when people say you are a fascist for being on the right side of the aisle, I don't see fascism anywhere in our Constitution. And Arno is now drawing a picture of his phone on a piece of paper for some reason.
I'm listening.
Okay, Arno. So
sad.
Yeah, sad. Do you guys have anything else to say about... actually, I do want to bring another point. Do you think there's a way to bring back civility to the college campus in terms of opposing opinions, or is it just an onslaught of hate and we can just never get over it?
You probably just gotta let it ride till the changes come gradually.
And I think that our being outside and talking about conservatism and sharing our opinions and tabling and stuff like that, that is actually a positive for conservatism, no matter how much hate we get. Because if you get it on film, which we have luckily, you put it out there, people are going to see and be, wow, that is what they're doing. This is what, they're intimidating people for having an opposing opinion. And I know University of Missouri, after the whole the whole riots that are happening there, they've lost alumni funding. And a lot of these colleges are getting scared now because they're losing alumni donations.
Yeah.
And I think that monetary impact of not allowing opposing opinions is going to actually gradually, and you said it's gradual, I think it's going to take a while, but I think if it actually takes a while, I think it'll be a solid movement that'll actually bring upon free speech and the exchange of ideas on the campus.
And I think just having outreach for clubs like College Republicans, or whether you have Students for Trump on your campus, something like that, is so incredibly important, because I think there are many students out there who may be conservatives or they may be right-leaning, but they don't, they're not very public about it. They don't want to have, sort of the stigma that the people on the left associate with conservative college students. So I think that's a battle we have to fight, is getting our name out there, getting outreach, reaching these students somehow, as well as I would encourage students to fight against the limits of free speech on campus wherever they see them, and that could mean writing a letter to the dean, that could mean participating in certain events.
And I mean, I just checked Twitter, Kellyanne Conway retweeted, was it the Blaze version of our article, or was it the Campus Reform?
I want to say Campus Reform.
She tweeted out the Campus Reform version of the Pitt Maverick article about what happened yesterday, October 31st, at the Trump stand, where a sign was destroyed and where we were spoopy, and where we were being yelled at a lot. And someone actually called the dean to our school, and I don't even think they go here. She just said, I have 2 kids in college, on Twitter. I don't even. So I think that people are actually, this type of thing is actually starting to get people to notice, like, what is going on? You have to call the mayor. But I think people are actually starting to notice in the mainstream, because I think colleges are so, like you said, insulated. I think that it doesn't really get out. And I think conservatives have to be the ones that go on and say, this is what's happening. I was in a class the other day, and my professor literally said our Constitution is showing its age. No. I disagree with that.
Tell us, what class was this?
It's Brazilian history.
Brazilian history.
And he was talking about how great racial democracy is and how we should have that here.
I promise you get so much worse in the American history class.
My American history class last semester was a joyride. I was taught by a gender studies professor, so we can all imagine how that was.
The American Revolution from a gender perspective.
Oh, God.
That's valuable.
Is that even a thing? Like are these real things? Gender studies is so. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Gender studies is so feminist. I feel it's more like feminist studies than gender studies.
Well,
but
STEM's so meninist.
But if there's no difference between a man and a woman besides the way you dress and the way you act, what's the point of feminism? What's the point of having gender studies or from a gender perspective if there's no difference? I mean, I could just say, like,
I think that's a topic for another show, Sam.
I think that we should talk about that one day. That'd be a really fun thing to talk about.
We're going to need an hour plus for something
We're
like that.
We're going to need like 30 hours for that. We'll have a live stream on YouTube, and we'll have a camera out here, and you'll see all the Red Bull that Andrew will be drinking water, and we'll be drinking Red Bull.
Oh, I might have to break out coffee for that one.
No.
So my question was going to be, especially since you guys are history majors as well, have you ever had to read Howard Zinn's A People's History for one of your classes?
Thank God, no.
I had to read it in high school.
What?
And, yeah, exactly. And it was extraordinary to be exposed to like someone who literally identifies as a socialist writing their view on American history.
Well, I've had American history classes taught by Marxists, and yeah, I'm sure it's very similar.
Wait, like they came out and like did they?
Yeah, and
you can also tell, like.
My TA at the very least came out as a Marxist, but the professor wasn't far behind.
Remember how
Did you ask
great
for other
Marxism
people's
worked?
good grades?
What's that?
Did you ask for other people's good grades?
What do you mean?
Like if someone got an A, it's like, oh, can that be mine too?
Nationalization of good grades.
In my freshman seminar on comp last year, one of the pieces we read was by Edward Said, and I looked into him further, and he's a vehement anti-Western, anti-American writer who's Palestinian, and it was extraordinary to be exposed to something like that straight away in college.
I read this one piece by this super feminist author. There's this rule in movies and books about two women having a conversation that's not about a man with no man around. I forget what her name is. I'll look it up. I don't know. She's like one of these very famous feminist authors, and I didn't know this at the time, and then I looked her up.
It'd be sexist to forget.
Right, I'm sorry.
This this conversation where it's headed brings me back to a couple weeks ago on Bill O'Reilly's show. There was a professor from Yale named David Gelertner, Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. But one of the things that he said was that he is a professor at Yale who's supporting Trump, which makes him in the incredible minority. And he spoke a lot about the students there and how he views them as living inside of a bubble. That, they're not, that he speaks to the effect that the college students, specifically at an Ivy League university like Yale, they can be so caught up with their insulated, as I said before, world that they're not aware of why somebody would support Trump, and that's a charge that we receive a lot here.
Side note, I'm sorry, Andrew.
It's a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt people a lot because that's who I am. It is Alison Bechdel. That is a beautiful woman.
Really? Oh. Mm. Hot.
That's a woman?
Yeah.
What the hell is going on?
What is going on?
Building off your point, Andrew, no, I think you're absolutely right. One of the first things that struck me when I first came to Pitt 2 years ago, I started getting a little annoyed. I mean, it took me a while to grasp what it was, and I realized that everything's just so insulated. We're not in the real world here. We're so, it's literally 2 blocks away, but it's so much further than that, intellectually and mentally. We're just so disconnected here from the rest of the world. And if you come into college with limited political knowledge or experience, that right there is going to completely reshape who you are.
And I think I have a job and I talk about it a lot because I'm cool. I work at Starbucks. I am one of those baristas who goes to college and makes coffee for people all day. I think having a job in college is one of the best experiences someone can have. Because I think it forces me to be good with my time, because if I don't do something and I have work in the morning at 9 a.m., and 9 a.m. is super early for me, as we all know. I think I usually wake around at noon because I'm great. Having a job in college, I think, is a really valuable experience. And I think a lot of these people who we talk about, and I hate to generalize, but I'm going to, that these people, they talk about $15 minimum wage, and they talk about all this stuff, and these people don't have jobs.
Oh, yeah.
They want all these things, and it's like, okay, go get a job. Go work and go to school. But they're like, oh, well, I got to do well in class. I'm like, I work like 20-something hours a week, and I go to class. And I have other responsibilities. If I can do it, you can do it. I've had a job since I was 16 years old.
Same with me.
I wrote a column recently about the education bubble we have in this country. And I think that's a big part of it, is that by overly stressing higher education, we're robbing young people, especially, of that kind of critical ground level life experience. They're going straight from high school into this sort of ivory tower, where they completely lose touch with the world and get completely remade, but in a way that robs them of this kind of experience you need to be a thoroughly well-rounded person.
And similar to Sam, I'm not currently employed during school hours, but during the summer and last year I worked at a Panera Bread, and I think it was actually one of the most valuable experiences in shaping me, because you realize very quickly that that when you're working, you can't run to a safe space. You can't retreat. You have to do the duties.
Especially in retail.
Absolutely. You have to do the duties that you're presented with, and it doesn't matter if a customer is mean to you. It doesn't matter if they're yelling at you. You have to do your duty.
You have to smile and nod.
And to perform your job. And I think we'd be amiss to have the college conservative discussion without mentioning Andrew Breitbart, of course. And I think one of the chief areas that he always mentions that converted him to conservatism was that his dad kicked him out of his house after college and made him get a job, made him pay his own bills.
And Rush Limbaugh talks about that too. He always mentions how when the day he turns 18, his father comes into his room and asks, "So where are you gonna live?"
And I've been really thankful. My parents provide for me. I live with my parents when I'm at home, and I'm fortunate enough that they are paying for college for me. And when people say, "Oh, well, then you have privilege," because that's what's going on. You have a lot of privilege, all this white privilege. People. I hate that, because people don't even know my family history. They don't know what's going on in my life. I don't know what's going on in their life, and I'm not going to try to stereotype them into a certain life or a certain upbringing. Like, who would know that I'm only a second-generation American whose grandparents came here after World War II when they survived the Nazis occupying Greece.
Right.
And they paid for their kids' college. And they taught their kids to live a certain way and to, raise their children, save their money, just be generally good human beings. And I think that America's kind of lost that idea. And I think that's the American dream, really, of moving up in society through generations, and part of the reason why I'm really passionate about urban poverty and race issues and stuff like that is because there are people who have lived here for generations now that haven't had success that people who have been here for one generation, 2 generations have had. And
One of my favorite quotes about what makes America such an exceptional country actually comes from Arnold Schwarzenegger. He said, quite simply, if you work hard and play by the rules, you can achieve the American dream and achieve anything that you put your mind to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think many young people don't have this attitude. And while I'm not as connected to my recent the ancestors as Sam was, my great-grandfather came here, didn't speak a word of English, and made shoes in a garage to be able to provide his children and his children's children with a better life than he had. And I think the story that used to be so common, that we used to tell people to achieve, has sort of been lost among young people.
And there's only one country in the world that has that history, and that's the United States. And when people say America was never great, I hate that. And when Donald Trump says "Make America Great Again," people have said "Make America Great Again." He wants segregation, all this nonsense. And there was this video I saw on Facebook about Trump talking about how the police really used to beat up people. And they start playing things from the civil rights movement and all these atrocities that occurred in the South. That is not what he's talking about. What Donald Trump talks about when he's talking about "Make America Great Again" is to reinvigorate the American people, recreate that American dream that we just spoke about. I mean, what other parts of the world can someone be in a garage making shoes, and now a few generations later you're sitting here making a podcast in college as a college student? And I know that there are a lot of people, and I think people kind of, take it for granted now that, there are some people that just are first-generation people to go to college, the first in their family. I think that should be celebrated more in this country, because I think that's what this country's about. And I think that all of this, to bring this back to intolerance of conservatism, I think that if we can just agree on certain basic things about the goals of this country, not to be more equitable, but to be more equal, and not by government forcing it, by people acting as independent people and being responsible, I think that's progress.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I feel, incredibly lucky in a way to be able to attend a university like this, that the people who've come before me have worked so incredibly hard to get me into this situation.
And I know, my grandmother, she didn't speak a word of English. She came here. She worked, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 jobs, and she went to school. She taught herself English. She had to pay her own father rent. And she started a family and with the man who she left with from Greece, and they paid for their children's college, and that's, I think we've lost that. And I don't necessarily know why that is. I think I have ideas, and I don't think that we can get into that now, but I think that focus of America and Donald Trump's "Make America Great Again," when people start telling us we're racists for saying that, we're not talking about segregation. And we're talking about all these terms that people are throwing at us: racist, sexist, homophobic, all these terrible things. We're not talking about going back to a time where nobody was tolerating other opinions, like they are not tolerating our opinions. We're talking about going back to a time where people could actually move up and down the ladder of society. And I think that
in our current, our system for what it was, I think it's the only system in the world where people can be built up without tearing other people down. And I think that's the ideology that many young people today subscribe to, whether that's redistribution of income, whether that's expansive foreign aid,
And when people talk about redistribution, it's not that everybody gets, it's not that the rich get poor and the poor get richer, everybody gets poor.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the things, and I'm gonna do it with my hands so you guys can see. It's like if someone's up really high up and someone's really far down, redistribution kind of does like this. Like it kind of like the high up goes really far down, and the really far down goes a little bit more up so that they're even.
One of my favorite quotes is from Margaret Thatcher in her last question time before Commons, when someone attacks her on income distribution, and she says, what you are saying is that you would rather the poor were poorer provided the rich were less rich. And I think you're exactly right, that the end result is that, yes, the rich becomes rich. You can close that gap. The income gap is so easy to close. But you do it at the expense of not only the rich, but the poor.
Yeah. and even more, I mean, like, why make the rich poor when everybody can get richer? I mean, why not just make it so everybody's more rich? And I think that we're kind of straying into our own personal political ideologies, but I think this is a good point to make, especially introducing. This is, I think, part of what conservatism is. It's not to, like you said, not tear people down. It's to bring everybody up. And when people talk about these greedy corporate interests and stuff like that, these greedy corporate interests are also employing millions of people. So if they're really that greedy, then I don't see the big millionaires going on the coal and digging up the coal for themselves. And like it's this little plantation of like this one guy who goes in every morning. Bless you. It's people hiring potentially millions or hundreds of thousands of people to do the jobs. And I think that this classical Marxist critical theory idea of the society we live in, that again goes back to college, where it's this indoctrination of people saying they're taking advantage of you. I mean, that's just classical Marxism right there.
And also, like, the concept of millionaire, I think people have a little bit misconstrued it. You know, a lot of these apparent millionaires are a lot of small business owners where, you know, these millions of dollars more come from the value of the property and their assets, not really the cash they have on hand. So it's not like they're, you know, really pocketing the money and, you know, to give, instead of giving to employees. And, like, I think people should understand that, you know, there are, you know, the government has so many expenses for business, like in the form of taxes and regulations, that Obamacare is in fact harming businesses. Like there's no secret vault of money that they're like holding from people.
Right. And I mean even these people talking about it's so much more fair. I didn't know that fair was what the founding of this country was about. I thought it was equality.
And I think
equality of opportunity.
Right. And I think equality and fairness are two very different things. And I think what has happened in I think before we were all born, and I think it started then, and I know that if you just look at history, you'll notice this beginning during the Progressive Era. It went from equality of opportunity to equality of outcome. And that's exactly what I think the current Democratic platform is, and what Bernie Sanders represents. It is not about, let's lift people up so that they can get the same opportunities, whether you live in the city or you live on a farm. It is about, how can everybody make the same? How can everybody have the same education and the same this and the same that?
And one of the points that I like to hit home, especially when we were doing our prep and the actual debate for the Pitt Republicans versus the Pitt Democrats, was that our social safety net it's a web. You know, it doesn't spring you back up. Right. It catches you, you sink, and you're stuck in that life.
And you only go farther down.
And I think everybody knows what conservatives are against, and I think one of the things that we're for is we want to be the hand up, not the hand out.
Right.
I think what's impressive is that, you know, almost all of us, and even Michael, you touched on this too, one of our main policy focuses is poverty.
Yeah.
Which I think, frankly, stands in pretty stark contrast to the Republican Party as it currently exists. But I think that bodes well for the future of the party, if we can provide that more positive vision that I think, especially at a time like this, is necessary. You know, like you said, not just what we're against, but what we're for, and outlining specific policies. Here's the situation. Here's why what they're doing isn't working. Here's what we can do for you. I think that's something that we've completely lost in the last maybe 10 years.
And I think that just losing so much of what we think is so great about America, and what we think is so great about just the way that we have carried ourselves as Americans and just as a country in general, is the reason why Donald Trump is popular. Because if you see a guy who, you know, at least acts like he loves the flag, I think he gives off that impression to a lot of people. You know, are people burning American and Israeli flags outside of the RNC? Like who want to be in there? Who support people in there? Are people think about how many American flags are inside of the RNC or inside of conservative politicians or events or organizations events. Like, there's a lot. At the DNC, they couldn't find an American flag to burn. They couldn't find one,
that's right.
They couldn't even find one in the building to hold up.
Well, the first they didn't have one, they got criticized, and they had trouble finding one to put on stage.
That I think really speaks a lot about our country right now. Because if there's a party that is, like you said, there was this book you read that was this like anti-American author,
and it was given to high school students without any introduction, without any background of who this man is, what he believes, and kids, I unfortunately think, took it as gospel.
And I think anti-American it's a term I think that's thrown out a lot, but I think that anti-American, when it really means that you are against the founding idea. It's pretty much the anti-American exceptionalism idea. And I think that a lot of what's going on, especially on the college campus, is people going against the ideas in our Constitution. Professors will say, well, our Constitution's getting old. No, it's not. It doesn't matter how old the document is.
Literally, it is getting old.
Yes, yes, the piece of paper is getting old, yes. But, the ideas don't die. There's still, you can't just say it's getting old when there's still at least half the country still believes in the document.
I think what that statement outlines is the problem with progressivism, just broadly speaking, because yes, it's getting old, but it's still working.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we are to discard it in the name of progress, then we'll have some 30-year regime that will cause mass misery.
And when people talk about progress, people forget about the history of progressivism and the history of what they thought progress was. For a long time, I'll let you make your point after this, Andrew. For a long time, progress meant racial progress. Progress meant there were all different types of progress that if you give the government the ability to say this is what progress is, evil things happen. Which is why our rights are so important, which is why the idea of that God-given rights, not man-given rights, not humanity striving to be more perfect, humanity striving to be, I guess, successful in such a way. I know that you have a...
And I think, and just to quickly branch off, Sam, I think that if you believe that our rights come somewhere else than from God, then the founding of this country is a lie from that point of view. But also, I wanted to hit briefly because we talked about how Trump the American flags of the RNC, and I think it's kind of an extraordinary thing. And I've actually heard people say that, how refreshing is it to see somebody embrace this country? And I do believe that Trump loves this country, and many people, I think, have actually doubted that. So one of my favorite stories that detail this is when Trump bought Mar-a-Lago, the club in Florida. There was a limit on the restrictions of a flagpole. So Trump had a 50-foot flagpole, and the limit was 30 feet. So Trump negotiated a deal, the best deal.
He makes the best deals.
He makes the best.
Mexico's going to pay for it.
Where he would donate the fine to a veterans organization, and he negotiated it down to the 30-foot flagpole, but he put it on top of a 20-foot hill. And
is there a picture?
Yeah.
Can you send this to me so I can put it in the link dump?
Oh, absolutely.
I'd like to put that in the link dump. And send me the image address.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I can add the stories as well as it relates.
And I think to that point, when we were sitting out there with to get back to the Trump table, we were out there with an American flag next to our table. None of those other tables, because there's Next Gen Climate, there's Hillary. Have there been other tablers during this election season? I usually just walk by.
For Trump?
No, just other political parties. I know there's been Libertarian once.
Just
I've seen
like not with the campaign, just for campaigning.
Just any.
I've seen students for
political
Hillary.
Okay.
Well, there's like the Next Gen Climate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they always.
They're everywhere.
Actually, funny story about Next Gen Climate. I was walking down Fifth Avenue and walking by the bookstore on Fifth, which is right next to the Starbucks, because Starbucks never leaves me. And I was wearing a shirt with the GOP logo on it.
Uh-huh.
And a Next Gen Climate person who asked everybody, "Are you registered to vote? Have you registered to vote?" Blah blah blah. They see my shirt and they turn around and they ask other people. I made eye contact with them and they just ignored me.
I guess climate isn't your candidate, Sam.
Hey, look, my candidate was shot by the Cincinnati Zoo, so.
See, I want to know how that works. Like, do they go in the booth, click the write-in option, and then type in climate?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's worth impoverishing millions upon millions of people just so that the ocean levels don't rise by an inch in 100 years.
But it's the most important issue is the quote that I constantly hear.
It's a national security threat, not the fact that Hillary Clinton had a private email server that could have been hacked multiple times, or the fact that she just broke the law and used her Clinton Foundation to siphon funds from foreign governments so she could do favors for them. It's climate. We all know.
Mm-hmm.
What's
Political climate.
What's extraordinary
We got
though
jokes
is
here.
just how many people they were able to register. That the influence that the climate activists alone have, and they must have registered literally at least like 5,000 people. Every time I saw them, there were people at their tables, and they were everywhere. It didn't stop.
And
even on the final day of registration, they were still registering people. It was incredible.
but I think to that point, I think that there's a lot of people on campus who are scared to get into politics. And I think that these people might be, I don't want to assume, but I think the people that are like actually keep on going up to these people where they see them and they register to vote on the last day. I mean, there were people coming up to the Trump table who are not college Republicans, who are not politically active on campus, and they say thank you for being out here, because nobody, like, it's so frowned upon to be a Republican or conservative on the campus. I mean, even, I don't want to say like a lot of great things about Next Gen Climate because I disagree with them, but I think that the climate on the college campus,
No pun intended.
no pun intended, does make people stray away from expressing their opinions. And I think, especially on the conservative side, I don't know about the more liberal perspective, but I know last year as a freshman, I was really nervous to come out and say I am a conservative. When I was at the Trump event with Hannity at Soldiers and Sailors Hall, where there were literal riots outside.
Someone called Sean Hannity.
Someone did call Sean Hannity.
Were you there, Sam?
I was.
Oh.
I just wasn't in the club last
We
time.
had special reserve seats.
I saw the back of Andrew's head, actually. I sat right behind Andrew. I just didn't talk to Andrew. Because I spoke to Andrew on the last day of our class.
Yeah,
Cool like that. Woo!
Literally the very last day, I opened my laptop. Another plug for my laptop, famous.
Woo!
Sees the Reagan Bush sticker, and then that's
So the last day of our world politics class, I see Andrew sitting there with Yorgi and Sarah, who's in College Republicans, name drop, and I have a Reagan Bush shirt on, and I'm coming up, he's like, "Hey, I like your shirt," and I'm like, "Thanks." I'm too awkward to actually have a conversation about anything with Reagan or Bush because I'm too stupid, so I was just like, "Oh yeah, I like Reagan and Bush." And when I saw Andrew's laptop the first time in our recitation, when we were having a debate about the Syrian civil war, Andrew just completely destroyed me in that debate.
I was Assad, so I'm not too proud about that.
And I was, hey, if it makes you feel any better, I was Obama, so I was no John Kerry in that. So Andrew just it's sweet chin music me in that debate, absolutely.
I think it's actually an area where I think we can catch up to the other side, and that's branding. And I think Turning Point is an organization who's done a very good job of that, getting conservative, I'm not going to call it propaganda, but just signs, stickers, messages, etc. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do.
It uses pop culture. It uses stuff like that
Ron
to
Swanson.
try to connect.
Frank Underwood.
Yeah.
And I think it's something an area we can do better with, and I've been trying to contribute by having these stickers, having Trump memorabilia in gear where I can.
Mm-hmm. And I think those little things make conservatives more comfortable to be conservative
Absolutely.
on the campus.
Because I can't tell you last semester and last year the number of Bernie stickers that I would see on laptops.
I mean, even just for me, when I saw your Reagan sticker, I was like, wait, you can like talk about your politics on this campus and you won't be like burned? Like, I didn't know that. Cause then I went to the final with a Reagan Bush shirt, and ever since then, ever since I noticed people are actually like open about their politics, at least on the right side of the aisle, which I think is, again, like we spoke about, like feel intimidated on the campus, that that unity behind not even just ideas, just behind that simple side of the aisle, just being together. I think that creates not even a movement, but just necessarily like comfort. It creates an environment where people feel, hey, I can talk about my opinions.
What's amazing is that as rough as it is here, just by virtue of it being a university, it's so much worse in so many other universities in the
absolutely.
country. And what was it, UC Berkeley the other day, where they blocked off some key avenue to whites and Asians and only let blacks and Hispanics through. And that's a one-day news story. But you have to imagine, if you're a conservative there, you just can't say anything. You can't do anything because you'll just be locked out of any discussion.
Mm-hmm. And being a conservative in the classroom, I will say something conservative, and I know everyone's going to disagree with me, but I've come to be comfortable with. I came out as a conservative, and it was a very emotional time. Just being conservative, I mean, growing up with two parents as Democrats in a family full of Democrats and on a campus that is super liberal, if you find comfort with expressing your opinions, I don't know if there's any way that people can intimidate you out of expressing your opinions. And I mean, we have seen the worst of the left on this campus in 2 weeks. And
imagine what next week's going to be like.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh boy. 1 week from today, everyone.
Looking forward to working the polls.
I think, especially in the classroom, it's an area where we sort of have to fight the good fight, so to speak, and represent our viewpoints, represent what we stand for, and not back down, because I think it's important for students to hear the other side. And I can say, because we spoke a little bit about the club and who we are, I think out of all of the clubs, sports teams, organizations that I've been a part of, I think College Republicans at Pitt is the most tight-knit of any of those organizations. Yeah. And I think it's because we recognize in each other what it means to be a conservative on a college campus in this current climate.
Mm-hmm. And I think that this comfort has to... What?
I was laughing about political climate.
Yeah, the political climate change. I think that this political comfort with people, I think, is so important. I think that that's why getting our message out there, doing a podcast, having a newspaper, being active, it will create a more healthy political climate, whether the left likes it or not. And because I think that they're scared, like, to be honest, to see the other view. That I think that just existing as people who oppose their view is positive.
And I want to mention the Maverick a little bit more, because I think in our short existence, we've received an extraordinary amount of coverage, an extraordinary amount of internal success. Having stories have been broken nationally by whether it's Sean Hannity, our boy.
Well over 100,000 people have seen all this stuff.
Stephen Crowder, Kellyanne Conway, especially just today.
Crowder tweeted it?
Yeah, Crowder tweeted it today.
Last week's video he tweeted.
Oh, really? And then Glenn Beck, Ben Shapiro, like all the
I was trying to check that. Where
Shapiro retweeted the Blaze article.
I can't believe he retweeted the Blaze.
I mean, I don't know if Shapiro's a big follower of the Pitt Maverick, but
people keep hating on the Blaze.
Blaze. I just think it's a funny name for a conservative news organization.
I mean, it's not very successful, but
I know. I just think it'd be more appropriate as like a Bernie Sanders. Let's all smoke weed and
I think
that's Bernie type of thing.
I think they were trying to like be cool by naming it Blaze.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Glenn Beck, the Blaze. I'm gonna cry.
I'm extremely excited for the future of the Maverick too, because that's something that's going to outlive any of our time here, and it's something that's going to continue on.
It's gonna outlive me, because when I die at like 30.
From his lifestyle of Madden and Starbucks.
Yeah, boy. And Cadoba.
But I think we've done some great things, and I think we've already shown that we have a readership already, and that we can compete against.
And I think people know that if they do something violent, we're gonna get caught.
Unlike other organizations, we're going to report on this. We're going to show what happens.
And I think the important part is we'll report on it, whether I think it's. I mean, has the Pitt News?
Someone should double check me on this, but I checked yesterday and I couldn't find anything about any Trump incidents.
On the Pitt News.
Yeah, it makes national news, but doesn't make the Pitt News.
Right, because you got to really work hard to be on the Pitt News. I know there was an event last week where I just started spraying from the hip, and everybody who works
I think you have to support Evan McMullen to be interviewed by the Pitt News.
Right, right. So for people who don't get that joke, there's a guy in our club named Steve. And we won't say his nickname because we do want to not be canceled.
This is a
civilized show. And they interviewed him about his candidate. So Steve was a Cruz supporter and is if I'm correct, right?
Yes, he did.
And now he's a Trump supporter. And they quoted him as saying that he supports Evan McMullen.
How do you mix that up?
Which I think, and I will never let him hear the end of this because it's just such a funny. I mean, just anybody who knows Steve knows that's not, that's not at all.
He's so far from the average Evan McMullen supporter.
God, he doesn't live in Utah, so
he's so far from Evan McMullen's base of Mormon Utahns,
Yeah. just that whole thing where it's just like, come on. And then there was the article about the NRA and about the NRA meeting where he compared something about Jews and Hitler. And it's like, I do remember he mentioned something like that, but it was not what they wrote.
It was horribly misquoted.
I was misquoted as well, actually, in a fairly minor way.
But it's still a misquote.
But it's still a misquote, and I was very frustrated with it, understandably, because I think it shows. I mean, to people who wouldn't know that I was misquoted, which is literally everybody who read the article, thinks. I mean, they just people who don't know, they misquoted me saying that we elect Supreme Court justices, which I think is troubling because it's showing that a Trump supporter on a campus
that just makes you look stupid.
Vehemently misunderstands the way one of our system of governments
Pizza Party Andy does not know how the government works.
I mean, it's frustrating in that because I know that it wasn't intentional, but to many people who read it, they took it as me saying that I don't understand.
And I think that really spans into the greater media, where a lot of these media organizations have tried to go out and find Trump supporters who are not maybe more knowledgeable in politics, and they have made them look like dumb rednecks. And I hate to use that term, but that is literally what they're trying to do. They're trying to fit these people into the stereotype of being a dumb redneck.
It's a classic trick. I mean, and we all know, Trump supporters, whether it's family or friends. But, I don't know if I certainly don't know any of the people who think like the people they put on TV sometimes.
Yeah.
You just wonder where they find these people.
And I think that's true when we're tabling. Even though we're sitting there with a Trump sign, it does not mean that we are not disgusted by things he has said. It does not mean that we agree with everything he has said. The whole point of the two-party system is that it's like a broad party for a broad coalition.
Any more than Hillary supporters support every shady thing she has ever done.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And the person yesterday, it's on the video on the Pitt Maverick, which I will link, plug. He goes, tell me something bad Hillary has done besides the emails.
Sure.
Okay, sure. I mean, that's easy, but that's the biggest thing that she's done. That's like saying, okay, name one bad thing Mussolini did besides fight World War II. Okay,
how do we get started? Where do we begin?
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna need 3 textbooks worth of information that's explaining this to you. Just this idea of just this double standard too of just representing people the wrong way. I know that yours was most likely unintentional for the benefit of the doubt, but just in the national media, if Fox News did that with Hillary supporters, oh my God, would Fox News, their building would just blow up. Somehow it would just fall to the ground. I mean,
Well, they do have
They have great lawyers.
They have no. What's O'Reilly's guy he sends around the college campuses?
Waters.
In Waters World, they do those fake questions sometimes.
But I think that is intentionally funny.
Yeah.
These people are actually actively trying to go out, and then they comment on it. I mean, I know that I don't know if John Oliver's done it.
I'm sure his cronies and his ilk have.
I'm pretty sure John Oliver's done things. I know that a lot of these people do things, and they will comment on it. It's like, look at all these idiots that are voting Republican right now. They're so dumb. And it's like, okay, that's one guy. Like, one person. Like, we are not fascists. One person does not represent our movement. There might be, like, the temporary head of the movement or the temporary standard bearer of the party or the movement, but they are not the head. It is essentially a headless movement, and the movement is it's a movement of the people. It is not a movement of one person.
And I think I certainly don't agree with Trump on every position, and I certainly will not defend everything that he's ever said. But I think one of sort of my missions has been to argue some rationality for supporting Trump, because so many people, so many young people especially, are so astonished at the thought of supporting Trump. So my mission has been to provide rationality, to provide the arguments for supporting him. And that could take many forms. That could take a letter to the editor to the Pitt News. That could take standing up for something that in a politics class. So now
that was a really great conversation. I think that we should focus on something else now, which is the polls. And I think the polls, don't believe them, folks. They're rigged. Huge news today coming out of North Carolina that Trump is winning by 7 points in one of the polls.
Wow.
538 has just updated his chances to 51.8% for winning. Clinton 48.2 if you can't do math. He's winning, he has a chance to win Ohio. He now has a 52.5% chance to win Florida, and they're saying he has a 21% chance in Pennsylvania. I don't know if I believe that.
Oh, is that from the new poll that came out? He was ahead by a point.
I don't know, because this would be like a survey of the polls. So.
And Nevada is in play, it seems.
To me, even North Carolina is great, but for me, Florida is really the state that I'm excited to see turn this way, because at the end of the day, Romney won North Carolina in 2012, so we have to look at how can we expand this map, and of course Florida is perhaps the definition of a swing state, so seeing this flip back
I think
this election is going to come down to Pennsylvania. If you look at this,
I think it's going to come down to it.
But that's the issue, though. Even if all of these states that we're talking about, with the exception of Pennsylvania, flip to Trump, we still lose.
Yeah,
and that's where Pennsylvania comes into play, because we can't walk that tightrope. The probability-wise, it's nearly impossible. Mm-hmm. And one thing I think 538 isn't taking into account is the enormous advantage the Clinton campaign has on the ground.
Absolutely.
I said this recently, that in Pennsylvania, the Republican Party has about 60 staffers. The Democratic Party has literally hundreds. And they're working all the time, and they have more volunteers than we do. And this is being replicated in state after state after state, because Donald Trump in his campaign never bothered to invest in a ground operation. And I think on Election Day, that's really going to come back to bite them, because we have no idea what the propensity of his voters are to actually go to the polls, especially considering that a lot of these people are new voters.
I'm going to give Trump a chance, because here's why. Nevada's in play, and it's even in play in the Senate right now.
But that's not new for a battleground state. Nevada's been a battleground state for 2 decades.
I know, but if he wins Nevada, it comes down to Colorado and New Hampshire, pretty much. Or Pennsylvania.
If he also takes Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio, and remember that Virginia's off the table because he pulled out of there last month.
I know, well, I'm looking at the thing on 538 that has Clinton winning Virginia. If he wins Nevada or Colorado, he wins.
It's such
it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be tight.
And this is an area where I've argued with fellow Trump supporters over, because I hear many people say, "Oh, we're going to win Michigan, we're going to win Minnesota, we're going to win Wisconsin."
Oh my God, Minnesota!
No. The reality is that's completely false.
There's some areas in Michigan. I don't know. I think if he wins PA, if that's indicative of he's
going
to win a landslide if he wins PA.
I wouldn't say a landslide. I think that will put him over the edge, and I think that edge will be the nail in the coffin.
I just think if he wins, he's just not going to have it. If it gets close, I don't think he'll get PA.
it's a general trope that, like, for the Republican to win the White House, they need to have an almost perfect day. I think Trump needs to have an almost Hail Mary day, given what we've seen so far.
I think that we're not taking into account
This is
things.
so much worse
But
than the
these-
McCain map
but
right
these-
now.
these-
It's worse than McCain.
But these polls, I don't think these are even polls post FBI.
So they're starting to reflect that, but not completely.
But there's going to be more revelations.
I heard from pollsters this morning that we can start to see the FBI thing fully reflected on Thursday. But if you look at the tracking polls, it's for Trump, it's been very, very encouraging the direction it's been going.
Mm-hmm.
So you can probably expect a lead for Trump in most of the tracking polls by Thursday if this trend continues.
I mean, all Trump.
Whether that can carry over into the states
It's his biggest surge ever. So far, so the last poll conducted was from the 26th and the 25th till yesterday.
Right, and that doesn't fully cover, because when did the FBI thing come out? Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And he broke his ceiling. He's well past 45.
it's impressive, but the question is this happening maybe 1 week too early for Trump?
Oh, probably not.
Will this go back down?
No, I
It
don't
depends
think
on
so.
momentum. O'Keefe's still got that video. There's still WikiLeaks stuff coming out. I mean, Donna Brazil had to step down.
I mean, there's a lot of. Well, she was fired.
Oh, is that what it was?
Stepped down.
I just remember that.
She's still at the DNC though.
Yeah.
That's not. Yeah.
Well, they love corrupt people there. I mean, I'm giving him a chance because I think if what's coming out is really bad, and I think what's going to come out is pretty bad. I don't know if it's going to be terrible nail in the coffin.
Bad from what?
Bad Veritas stuff, bad WikiLeaks stuff.
Okay.
I mean, they've been saving this stuff now.
Mm-hmm. And
I mean,
WikiLeaks has stuff they want to release until after the election.
Right. I mean, this could very well come down to the wire.
So given that this is going to be our last time doing this before the election, number one, maybe we should make predictions, and number two, what happens if Trump wins?
Oh, there's gonna be freak out and everyone
This
party.
college campus is going to be on fire, and we were all going to be partying.
I think, so I'm going to give sort of an A prediction and a B prediction, because whenever I go into a race as a runner, I always have to say, okay, this is going to be the best possible situation, and then this is going to be a good situation. I think the best possible situation is Trump winning incredibly narrowly. That could mean flipping Pennsylvania. That could mean flipping New Hampshire. And I worry that sometimes, and I worry in New Hampshire sometimes, that's not going to be enough. So I think the best possible situation is Trump winning very narrowly. But I think if I had to give a more realistic situation, I would say given the information that we have at this very moment right now, I think Hillary will win.
Michael?
I don't know. I don't. I have my hopes up for Trump. I think he can keep the momentum going. I guess with swing states, I think Ohio is going to go red.
Yeah.
I think North Carolina
I think it's going to go red.
Well, I think North Carolina is the case of it's already was going to go red. It's just that the polls were that was rigged. That's a Republican +5 state. How are Democrats doing that?
Obama
Well,
won
the
North Carolina in
demographics on the East Coast, especially in North Carolina and Virginia, are changing very quickly.
Okay, I didn't think it was going to.
Virginia 10 years
extraordinarily.
ago would have never been ever expected to be a battleground state for Republicans.
This
And now it's not even. It's just a Democratic state.
And this will be probably the only time in my life that I give a shout out to Howard Dean. While he was serving as chair of the DNC,
The 50-state
he implemented
strategy.
the 50-state strategy,
That's right.
which is truly extraordinary. I mean, if you were to tell me 10 years ago that Virginia would be a lean Democrat and now even a safe Democrat state, I would laugh. In 2008, Obama won Indiana, which is pretty extraordinary, and that's where I have to give the Democrats some credit on that. When Howard Dean implemented the plan 10 years ago,
I think Maine will go red. Hopefully.
I could see the
That's my
second
team.
The one
congressional
congressional
district.
I wasn't a big Trump guy to begin with, but all of the stuff that's happened on this campus has made me he'd be a big middle finger to everybody ever in the history of America. I gotta give, if he can take advantage of these leaks, and if he can pulls some miracle and win Pennsylvania, he'll win. It comes down to Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. So I think, we're at least in agreement
this,
that Pennsylvania is very well the state
Pennsylvania
that is the tipping point.
Just to short note, he's down by 4 in all the combinations. Clinton has not led in Pennsylvania.
There's one outlier that does.
There's
2 outliers.
There's very few. Clinton has led in Pennsylvania this entire time. I'm taking into account WikiLeaks, taking into account the FBI investigation. If something does come out, I think he'll win. I really think. Steve Bannon, or not even that. Kellyanne Conway is going to tie him to a chair. And she's going to say, repeat after me. Clinton emails bad. I am good. Vote for me.
I think she needs to put his phone in a safe at night.
If you could just not tweet for 1 week. My prediction is something close to a blowout for Hillary. And that's just because of her ground game. The map right now is about as rough as it was for John McCain, where you have to walk this tightrope, you have to win every battleground, then you have to flip something, and once again, it's Pennsylvania. Every losing Republican campaign relies on Pennsylvania. That's just how it goes. But our ground operations are infinitely weaker than McCain's. McCain's did have some kind of ground game. We have almost nothing. I think that's going to show on Election Day. I think we will underperform in the polls.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know. I think when you have a strong voter base that openly wants to tune into you, I don't think ground game really matters that much. When people are willingly want to tune in to hear what you say every time.
We always joke in the Republican Party that it's not as important for us because our voters will crawl through glass to vote for us. But we're talking about all these new voters. Who's going to turn them out? That's when the operation becomes more important than ever. And that's what we're lacking in this election. Number one is an important operation.
Well, thank you, Arna, for depressing us right before we wrap up. Thank you for listening. This has been the first episode of the Mavericast. We'll see you next time after the world ends.